So willpower. It's something that I see a lot of people saying, oh, I wish I had more willpower, or I just need more willpower and then I'll be able to lose weight. And I think this isn't very helpful to focus on. I think it's kind of the same as motivation. I've done videos on motivation before. I think it's great if you have motivation and willpower, but I think relying on them is not a recipe for success. Mainly because you can't really control how much you have, and say motivation is very fickle, it's very rare, and willpower is kind of limited. We can train it, but it's also very individual how much willpower you actually have. And we see studies that where if we tax people's willpower, say in the morning with sort of mental tasks, then they will tend to eat more sort of when given choices of foods, for example, and as I said, this can really vary between individuals. So some people just have great willpower, and I see it often as well when people talk about self-control around snacking and they're just like, oh, I can't stop snacking. And again, this can be individual. Some people can just resist it more. They're not as responsive to food cues, and they can just control themselves more in these situations. And that might not be you, which, yes, it does suck, but it's not the end of the world. And often I see when people ask these questions, and particularly in weight loss groups, how do I get more willpower? Or, I just don't have any self-control around snacks. What can I do? And some of the responses I just don't find helpful at all. People are just like, oh, we just need to try harder. You just got to want it more. Just don't eat it. Or, just know what your why is. You need to figure out your why, and then you won't want to eat them. And these just aren't true or helpful. I mean, oh, just don't do it. I mean, oh, right, yeah, okay, we've solved obesity right now because we forgot to tell people with all this research we've been doing, we forgot to tell people just don't eat them. If it were that simple, right? And then it's not. And as I said, people just have more willpower than others. But if that's not you, don't worry, and I want to read out, I'm going to read this because I want to make sure I get it perfect, which was it was basically a study on willpower and self-control, and I think it just summarizes it really, really well. So what they basically concluded from this study was that when scientists analyzed people who appear to have tremendous self-control, it turns out those individuals aren't all that different from those who are struggling. Instead, disciplined people are just better at structuring their lives in a way that doesn't require heroic willpower or self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. The people with the best self-control are typically the ones who need to use it the least. It's easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it very often. And I just love that, because I think it just totally nails it on the head, right? If you don't have to use your willpower, you're going to get on easier with things like tempting foods, for example. Because to be honest, that's what most people talk about, right? They say, I have no willpower around these certain foods. Well, if you structure your environment in a way that you don't have to fight these urges, you're probably going to do better, right? You don't always have to use your willpower to stop yourself from eating them. You're probably not going to eat them, right? And this just comes down to food environment. And I talk about it quite a lot. And basically, does your food environment help you or does it hinder you? If you struggle to eat cookies, why are they in the house? Why are they on the kitchen counter where you walk past them 50 times a day? Why is it that every time you open a cupboard, there's junk food that you just can't not eat? Help yourself. Don't hinder yourself. The cravings come particularly through exposure, right? And that even comes down to availability. So if you know they're in the house and they're available, that's enough to trigger a craving. If they're not, probably won't, or at least you won't anywhere near as much, right? So just keep them out of the house. I understand there are instances where you have to maybe have them in, but if you do, have a limited supply. Get somebody else to hide them from you. Put them in places where you never go and you never see them. Because the less often you see them, the less often you have to ask yourself if you want them, and the less often you're likely to say yes. And I think this is really what it comes down to. When people just say, I need more willpower, you don't. You just need to structure your life and your food environment in a way that you don't need it. Because if the temptations aren't there, you don't have to fight them with your willpower. So, doesn't matter if you don't have willpower, you just need to be a bit smarter about how you structure your life. And then you won't need it. So it won't matter if you don't have it or not. So, hopefully you got some value from that, guys. If you did, please feel free to like the video. Drop a comment in, maybe something that you've found beneficial, something that's resonated with you. Please feel free to whack it in to the comments, because it's always nice to see that people find it helpful. Make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking the button in the top corner of the video, just so you get an alert when you get new ones, because these free tips are going to be coming thick and fast on a regular basis, so don't miss out on those. As always, thank you very much for tuning in, and I shall see you next time. Thank you.